One of the harder ways of starting a fire is the proverbial rubbing two sticks together, and that's basically what we're doing here. This is a device, a fire by friction device, which is rubbing two sticks together. There's several ways of doing this. All of them are not easy just to go in the woods and start learning to do this. They take a little practice beforehand, but the bow drill of all of them is probably one of the easiest because you have a kind of a mechanical advantage using this bow. It's going to be wrapped around this drill, and you're basically going to move it back and forth, causing fire by friction with what's called the baseboard. Okay, so that bow, we're going to move this a little faster pace than this, but this is basically it. Moves back and forth on here. You add downward pressure with this handhold, okay? And the key is to get a balance of downward pressure and the friction back and forth. Too much pressure, it stalls out, your string slips. Not enough pressure, it just keeps spinning and spinning and doesn't get hot enough to produce the coal. But as that process is going on, what's happening, if you got all those conditions just right, dust will form in this little wedged notch here. It'll fall down and eventually heat up to the point that it magically just kind of doesn't self-ignite, but turns into a small coal. It's kind of a myth that these things burst into flames. That is not true. That's somebody playing tricks. But what happens is a very tiny coal forms here, and then you take that coal, you put that into the tinder bundle, and then basically at that point we're doing what we've already done as far as trying to start a fire. We already have a fire system set up, put the tinder bundle in there, blow on it, add the fuel, and you have a fire. So this is sort of coming up with a match the hard way. But again, with a little bit of practice, this is a good skill to possess. So we're going to go through just the basics of bow drill fire making here. Again, you have a bow, and it needs to be rigid. And what I mean by that, it's got to be stiff. You don't want one that's real flexible. The string has to be just right, so it needs to be adjustable because you're going to have varying diameters of drills, but generally you want something about the diameter of a quarter down to the diameter of a nickel, somewhere in that range. Length, a good judge is kind of take your thumb and your finger and do this, and that's a good judge of length for the drill. Okay, the bows too, it's not that particular, but a good guide again for each individual and their length of their arms is to put one in your armpit, and then wherever your finger's tip is, that's a good judge for the length. And the fireboard, generally we're looking for something about 3/4 of an inch thick. This one's a little thicker. The disadvantage of that is you got to build up a lot more dust when you first start these before anything's going to happen. So that's a disadvantage if you get these too thick. If you get it too thin, you're going to burn through these real quick, and it's a pain in the butt cutting these little notches, with a knife. So a good 3/4 inches is a pretty good size to have. Only needs to be wide enough to accommodate the diameter of the drill, but if you do end up with one wider, you can always start on the other side and use these so you don't waste them. Okay. As far as the woods that you use, that's very important. You want to avoid any of the hardwoods, your oaks and hickories, and avoid your resinous woods, your pines and spruces and things like that. So you're looking for your medium grade woods. In our region, basswood, willow, cottonwood, trees like that work really well. Okay, a lot of other ones do too, but those, again, those would probably be my top picks for our region. And then finally, the last thing is a handhold. And you'll notice here that the ends are a little different. The one that's sort of bowl-shaped, if not a little flat, is the one where we want friction, okay? The other end, we don't want friction. So it's sharpened more like a pencil tip, and then it rides in here. And it's also very important that you lubricate this, whether run it through your hair to pick up oils or off your neck, or green leaves, grasses will work as well, soap, all those things can work to kind of help lubricate this, or you're basically going to be burning two ends, okay, which you don't want. Okay, the key is make sure this end never is in direct contact with the damp ground. It doesn't take much to get these things damp, and then it's kind of tough to do. We're going to start off here real slow. You'll notice that I've got this on a piece of bark, because if I sat this down on this damp ground and put my foot on here, again, think of a sponge. This would be like a sponge. It'd soak that moisture up and nothing's going to happen if this gets damp. So this is a fair weather device. Really tough to get things going in the rain or damp conditions. The other thing, we have a little piece of leather here, but you could use a leaf or a thin piece of bark to act as a coal catcher. Okay, and this is going to collect that coal that's going to form in the notch. Now the other thing you want is that notch should be facing you so you can watch it. You can see the smoke billowing and get an idea of when it's going to be ready. And we're going to load this by going on the outside of the string and just one wrap around and then pull it tight. It has to be snug. If you can do this really, really easy, it's probably too loose. And a lot of times you need to, halfway through, you might need to stop and adjust it if it keeps slipping on you. Now what we're going to do here is I want to lock my wrist against the front of my leg here. Okay. Now I'm left-handed. This is a comfortable method for me, being left-handed, is using my left hand for the power part here. But most people, if you're predominantly right-handed, it's going to be opposite of what I'm showing you here. But what we're going to do is just run this back along my leg. We're going to try to keep from going up and down with the bow. Keep it nice and straight. And until it kind of seats a little bit, again, we're not really putting a whole lot of effort into this. Just trying to get it to match the hole a little. At this point, I don't have hardly any pressure, downward pressure on my hand. Again, I'm just trying to get this to where it stops squeaking a little. Okay, I'm going to start putting some downward pressure on here, and you should see some smoke forming here shortly after that. All right. All right, I'm increasing the pressure. As long as it keeps smoking after you stop, you've got a coal. What you want to be careful of is not to destroy that by taking your foot off too quick. You don't have to be in a hurry, okay? Sometimes it's good to cook it a little bit. But we're going to carefully dump this on the tinder bundle. If you break it up into tiny pieces, you can have some trouble. And then you take that, put it in your TP fire, and again, same thing as a match at this point. But that's bow drill. Again, there's lots of other fire by friction, like hand drill. There's a pump drill and a whole list of other ones, but that's the basic principle. Rubbing two sticks together, creating that coal, and then blowing that into a flame like you see there.